Man insults Keanu Reeves on a first-class flight, instantly regrets it when the truth is revealed. It was a chilly Tuesday morning, and the spacious first-class cabin of a luxury airline was filled with the quiet hum of engines as passengers prepared for their flight. As the plane ascended into the skies, a middle-aged man named Greg sat in his comfortable seat, sipping on his champagne. Greg had always prided himself on his ability to spot a celebrity, and he had an unshakable belief that most famous people were overrated, living lives of luxury at the expense of their public image. Little did he know, today would be a day that would teach him an invaluable lesson about humility, judgment, and the dangers of arrogance. The insult. Greg had always considered himself a man of great taste and refinement. He had worked hard to achieve his position in the corporate world, and with success came privilege. A first-class seat on a plane was nothing more than an afterthought, something he felt entitled to. His lavish lifestyle often made him feel superior to those around him, especially celebrities. After all, they were just people, right? People who happened to have fame but not necessarily wisdom. As Greg flipped through the in-flight magazine, he overheard a conversation between the flight attendants. One of them mentioned a celebrity who had been quietly enjoying his meal, seated a few rows ahead in the same first-class section. Greg, always keen to satisfy his curiosity, leaned over to get a closer look. The man sitting in front of him was none other than Keanu Reeves. To the average person, Keanu might seem like a beloved actor, but Greg had long held the view that most famous people were simply overrated. He had seen Keanu's movies but had little interest in the personal life of a Hollywood star, so, when Greg saw the actor, he couldn't resist making a sharp remark. Looks like we have another one of those washed-up actors on this flight, Greg muttered under his breath, just loud enough for the person sitting next to him to hear. I bet he's living off the few roles he got decades ago. Isn't that sad? The person next to him raised an eyebrow, but Greg was too smug in his opinion to notice. He didn't even glance at Keanu to confirm his thoughts. He assumed the man was just like every other overpaid celebrity who couldn't be bothered to act like a real person. What he didn't know was that Keanu was listening. The regret. Keanu had always been a man of few words. He didn't seek attention, and he didn't find joy in the spotlight. That's why, when Greg made his comment, he didn't immediately confront the man. Instead, Keanu took a different approach. He waited. The flight attendant came by to offer beverages, and Greg took the opportunity to further fuel his self-righteous opinion. You know, I don't get it. These celebrities think they can just walk into a room and be treated like royalty. They probably don't even know the first thing about real work, he muttered, thinking no one could hear him. Keanu calmly turned his head and looked at Greg, meeting his gaze with a slight, knowing smile. Greg, feeling the weight of that stare, was taken aback. Keanu didn't look offended, not at all. Instead, he looked calm, collected, and almost serene. His presence had a quiet intensity, as though he wasn't affected by the petty remarks being thrown his way. It was a stark contrast to Greg's immediate assumption that the actor would be rattled. I don't think you quite understand, Keanu said, his voice gentle but steady. I've worked hard for everything I have, and I'm proud of the journey I've had. Greg was initially stunned by the sudden interruption. He hadn't expected the person he had just insulted to engage with him. Excuse me, Greg asked, clearly caught off guard. Keanu leaned back in his seat, a slight smirk on his face. I've made mistakes, learned lessons, and been through challenges just like anyone else, but the thing about judgment is that it only tells you about the person doing the judging, not the person being judged. Greg, momentarily speechless, chuckled awkwardly. He thought Keanu might have misunderstood him. No offense, but you're just an actor. I mean, you've made a couple of decent films, but what do you really know about real work or struggle? Keanu's smile didn't fade, but his eyes softened with understanding. It's easy to look at someone's life from the outside and make assumptions, but I've lived a life of sacrifice, loss, and constant reinvention. I'm not sure if you've ever had to face the same things. Greg's confidence faltered slightly, but he still wasn't entirely convinced. Well, yeah, like what? Keanu's eyes became a bit more intense, yet there was no anger in his voice. Like losing my best friend, River Phoenix, when I was just starting out. Like the constant battle with my own inner demons. Like losing millions in a business deal. Like walking away from fame when I saw what it was doing to the people around me. Greg shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He hadn't expected the conversation to turn this way. His smugness began to crack as Keanu continued. I'm not the person you think I am, Greg, Keanu said, his voice steady, but you're welcome to think that if it makes you feel better about yourself. The truth revealed. Keanu paused for a moment before continuing. But let me give you a piece of advice. You'll never truly know someone until you walk in their shoes, so maybe instead of judging someone, try asking them about their life, their experiences, their struggles. You might be surprised at what you learn. And Greg was silent, his previous bravado melting away. The calmness in Keanu's demeanor left him feeling small. The flight attendant, who had been silently observing the conversation, came over and whispered something in Greg's ear. "Mr. Reeves," the flight attendant said, "we just wanted to let you know that your request for a private lounge area has been arranged." Greg froze. It was then that he fully realized who he had been insulting. The calm, composed man he had just mocked was not only Keanu Reeves, one of the most respected and beloved actors in Hollywood, but also a philanthropist known for his generosity and quiet humility. The truth hit Greg like a ton of bricks. His assumptions had been completely wrong. Keanu stood up, smiled politely, and said, "Enjoy your flight, Greg." His voice was kind but carried the weight of wisdom that Greg had just come to understand. Conclusion: as Keanu left for the private lounge, Greg sat back in his seat, his thoughts swirling. He replayed the conversation in his mind, now acutely aware of how foolish and arrogant he had sounded. The very man he had insulted was a living example of resilience, kindness, and humility, traits that Greg himself could only hope to embody. In the end, Greg realized that it was easy to judge others from a distance, especially when you didn't know their struggles or journey. But the real lesson lay in Keanu's words. Judgment tells you more about the person doing the judging. Greg had thought he was above the actor, but it was Keanu's quiet wisdom that had shown him just how far he still had to go in his own life. As the plane cruised toward its destination, Greg made a promise to himself: he would try to be less quick to judge and more willing to understand others for who they truly were. He wouldn't make assumptions based on outward appearances or fame. Instead, he would focus on listening, learning, and respecting the experiences of those around him. After all, everyone has a story, and not all of them can be seen at first glance. If you enjoyed this story and the powerful lesson it taught about judgment, humility, and the power of kindness, make sure to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Greg learned his lesson, or do you think he'll fall back into old habits? We'd love to hear your opinions. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories, insightful life lessons, and discussions on the real value of humility and kindness. Stay tuned for more content. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell. Keep an open heart and mind. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay humble and keep learning.